Hey, it's Armand with Attract. At Attract Advisors, we offer accounting advisory, tax advisory, as well as financial management services. We're lucky enough to work with very many hardworking, talented entrepreneurs across many different industries. Many of these individuals are world-class in their sphere and have great stories to tell. This is our way of highlighting their accomplishments and their insights, and we hope you enjoy these conversations. Hey, it's Armand with Attract, and today we have a very special guest. We will be talking to Jenny Ruggerio. Jenny is the Executive Vice President of Finance for Enfra. Jenny, thanks for talking with us today.
Absolutely. I'm excited to be here. I have to tell you, when you asked me to do this a few weeks ago, I'd only ever listened to one podcast ever in my entire life. It was a conspiracy theory podcast, of course. And that was my one and only. And I listened to it like 6 months ago. So I went home and I told my kids, like, hey, I'm so cool. I'm going to be on a podcast because, you know, they're 8 and 10. And my 8-year-old looked at me and she goes, how many subs do they have? And I'm like, subs? Like, my CPA brain goes to parent-child relationship. Like, how many subsidiaries? You know? And I'm like, what is a sub? And she's like, Mom, you know, like likes, followers, you know, subs. I was like, subscribers? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, well, I don't know. Well, I didn't have the podcast app. I mean, I'm sure it was on my iPhone, but like I've never listened to a podcast, really, like only on YouTube. So I go to LinkedIn because that was the only place I knew to find y'all's podcast. I click on it. There is a podcast app, apparently. And I was like, oh, look, they have 255 subscribers. I think that's so cool. And she goes, not even 1K. I was like, dang, girl. Okay. So we got to get y'all more subscribers.
Yeah.
To impress the 8-year-old.
Yeah, she's got to like, comment, and subscribe. I think you're supposed to say that in every one of these.
Yes, I think so. So that's going to be my goal, to help y'all get more subscribers.
Awesome.
And I've listened to a couple of podcasts in the past week. So
Excellent.
I'm now like seasoned expert.
Excellent. Good. Well, yeah, we'll have every 8-year-old in Baton Rouge subscribe.
Ready to listen to the accounting and finance worldly news here.
Absolutely. Well, and to that end, I guess a little bit before we kick off, you know, we've been blessed to interview a wide range of people so far. A lot of small business owners, and just, you know, people with different areas of expertise. Jenny is one of the best executive accountants I've ever come across, ever had the privilege of working with. So this conversation is going to be more accounting focused than some of our previous conversations, which I'm sure is going to bump the likes, comments, and subscribes for this one. Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll go back to tell you a little bit about myself.
Yeah.
I born and raised in Baton Rouge, as you all know, because we go back more years than you said you wanted to disclose.
Right.
I went to LSU, had my undergrad and master's in accounting at LSU. I went on to do the Big Four accounting thing right out of school, as most of us accounting majors did. Worked at Ernst & Young for a few years, and then made that switch over to industry after I'd had enough of the grind at the Big Four. Worked in a couple of different industries, and then 7 years ago landed at what was at the time Bernhard, is now Enfra.
Right.
So when I hopped over to there, I was hired as the Director of Financial Reporting, which is really where the technical accounting story begins with my days at Enfra. So at the time when I came in, my assignment immediately was to implement ASC 606, the new revenue recognition standard. So this was 2018. I was interviewed in the end of June in 18, started in August of 18. So exactly 7 years ago almost. And as some of us might recall, the 606 RevRec standard was effective for private companies January 1, 2019. So I had a tall order. Get in, implement 606 for this company ASAP by January 1. So first week on the job, we bring in some consulting folks from Deloitte that were experts in construction and 606. The guy that came in to help is now our audit partner. Here we are 7 years ago,
right.
7 years later, thank goodness. And so that was really my first task in my first project was to dig in. And so dig in, learn the standard, learn the business. How do we need to change what we do today from 605 to 606?
Right.
And we've got a multitude, variety of types of work and types of contracts. And so the policy and the implications were different based off of what type of work, which division of the company we were talking about, and which type of contracts we were talking about.
Right. And so at that time, I think, and like I said, I started to do the math on how long we've known each other, and the number was too big, but we've known each other for a couple of years or decades, however you want to look at it. Yep. But at the time, so you and I were working for different companies, but had common ownership, and
Correct.
we were kind of masterminding around some of this. And it was funny at the time because, and we'll talk more about this, but throughout, the accounting changes, since you and I have been kind of working together professionally, some of them were not so big for you. Some of them were not so big for me.
Right.
Some of them were a pain for both of us.
Right.
But and we'll get into that. So at Enfra, so tell me about Enfra and talk about energy as a service.
Sure. So Enfra is a provider of energy infrastructure, and we have been at the forefront of this industry for quite some time now. We were really, pioneering what is energy as a service,
Right.
and is now widely known as energy as a service. So in general, though, we do provide all energy infrastructure services as well. So what we do in energy as a service, though, is we take the combination of all of the services that we can provide on a standalone basis, and we integrate those into a single integrated solution, which is energy as a service. So we will come in and we will design energy upgrades for an existing or a new facility. We will upgrade the facility. We will handle not only the engineering design work, but the mechanical, electrical, construction. We will then, in the longer term, it's a sustainable approach for the customer as well, because we can operate and maintain their plants for a longer period of time and ensure that their plant and their facilities are operating in an energy effective manner. Mm-hmm. So it's really a full life cycle solution. And like I said before, we will offer that full life cycle solution in really whatever way the customer needs. We meet the customer where they're at. So, we do have some sites where they are greenfield. A customer is looking to build a new hospital. But most of our work is existing facilities. So it's hospitals and higher ed largely that are aging. Their energy infrastructure is aging. So they bring us in to design a new system, a new energy infrastructure that is going to be energy efficient and cost effective for them. So if they just continue to replace things as they break, status quo, they will spend more money in the long run than if you let us come in and do it right. Come in, upgrade your plant, upgrade the infrastructure within your facilities, within your hospital or your classrooms or whatever it is. Make sure those are all talking together, implement controls, and then after the engineering and construction period's over, we will continue to operate and maintain that entire infrastructure to ensure that you are reaching those cost savings that we guaranteed you, as well as having a sustainable energy efficient infrastructure for the long term.
Right. And it's a great business model, right?
Right.
Because, you have the experts that know how to design and construct it, but obviously those people are also going to know how to maintain it.
Correct.
Right. And so it's a win-win because you guys are the expert in the long term and you're a one-stop shop for forever for this hospital or school, right?
Absolutely. One-stop shop. We handle the entire integrated solution. And so at the same time, though, we have lots of work that is those same types of services on a standalone basis.
Right.
So we, while we do have this innovative, integrated energy infrastructure solution called Energy as a Service, we also have the energy services that we've provided for over 100 years.
Right.
And that could be any sort of mechanical construction, electrical construction, and energy-related designing, engineering.
Yeah.
Engineering design.
And so, and without, and I've worked with your team. I've been very lucky to work with your team, and it's been more system related. But I've gotten the gist of the contracts and all that. But without getting too specific, of course. But like you said, these energy as a service contracts are very complex, yes. Right? And they're very long term, right? And when you and I started working together, or when we were masterminding the 606 RevRec change, I guess, almost was 7 years ago. I remember our first meeting, it was a little deer in the headlights, right? Because, and y'all's contracts, it seems like, from a legal standpoint, like you said, you meet the customer where they're at, right? So, maybe no two are alike, right? And you guys perform all sorts of different services under one umbrella. Mm-hmm. So you've got the intercompany, activity. So talking about that first big project that has now, evolved to you being the executive vice president, how did you guys approach that, and how did you succeed, right?
Right. So, it's really as simple as we had to dig in, dig in and study, like back in grad school type studying, study that new guidance. And so it was understanding the guidance and how it impacts construction in general and our service component as well, because that operation and maintenance, and we offer standalone mechanical services on, service type contracts as well. So understanding how our types of business are impacted by the new revenue recognition standard. So we hired some advisors from Deloitte that were specific to our industry. I read anything I could find that was industry related. AICPA publications, the CFMA publications.
Right.
All big four, anything I could get my hands on, I read, digested, right? And then it is really looking at your contracts and kind of grouping them, right? And saying, okay, this is one type of work. How does it impact this type of work? Here's another type of work. How does it impact that? And what are the various components that we need to analyze that are, key components? And that's where the industry related guidance and interpretations really come in handy. Like, okay, in construction, for instance, the termination for convenience clauses can be really a sticking point, and the language in there can really sway your accounting conclusion one way or the other very quickly, so just kind of knowing those things you need to be on the lookout for. And so, I had to draft all the policies before January 1 and make sure that we had converted all of our existing contracts to being 606 compliant by January 1, 19. You would think that's where it ended, right? But that's really where the fun just began.
Right.
Because after that, the next job we closed as in signed, the next energy as a service project that we brought on our books was where the fun really started, if I'm being honest. And that's where it was like, all right, now we've got to take a brand new contract that's thousands of pages long. As you mentioned, our company is actually a consolidated entity of lots and lots of entities, lots of companies. Right. And we do a lot of intercompany work for each other within our entity that is Enfra. And it's, that is strategic in that we are able to guarantee the quality and the energy savings to a customer because we are self-performing a lot of work, right? So it's intentional. But all of that together, the 5 layers of consolidation, the 40 plus entities that are contracting with one another, even adds to the complexity that already is applying 606 to a complex revenue, a recognition standard when you've got multiple performance obligations, et cetera. So really, I would say working through that first energy as a service contract, at the time, this was still an emerging market, energy as a service. Yeah. We were pioneering this, and so working with my team at Deloitte, who had come on as our auditors within the first 6 to 8 months that I was at Enfra. We were working with their national office daily for 6+ months through that first project. And we still frequently work with the national office when there are questions on new projects, because as you alluded to earlier, no two are the same.
Right.
There's always differences between one contract to the next. And as those differences come about, we come up with, again, we have to dig in. You've got to pull up the guidance and analyze, and come up with your proposed accounting treatment. And then, unlike anyone else, right? And then I go to my auditor, what do you think? And this stuff is so highly technical that most of the time the answer is, we're going to confirm with national office. And my answer is yes, please do. Because the last thing I want is for you guys to change your mind right before the audit's getting issued, right?
Exactly.
That we both concluded something incorrectly. So then they go and check with the national office folks who are experts at 606 or at 842 or whatever your standard is, right? So I've spent far more time in the past 7 years than I ever thought I could consulting with national office folks at Deloitte. And so that's been fun though, because it was, okay, this is new guidance. This is an emerging market. This is a niche industry. We are coming up with what do we think it should be. There is no pre-written interpretive guidance out there for this type of contract. There wasn't really for anything because that standard had just come out. So I would say that's how we really, got to where we are now is, there's no other way to say how we started other than digging in. We had to dig in, research, read, analyze, and the approach hasn't changed. As we have new contracts that are different than, a prior one, it's kind of the same thing. Lay out your facts and circumstances and, pick up the guidance. And I don't even have to favorite the Deloitte accounting roadmaps anymore because they're just there in my frequent searches. I just type DART and they pop right up.
All 1,100 pages of them.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's not unlike, it's those skills that you also learn when you're at the Big Four in the early days of your career, doing that research, as a senior auditor. That doesn't go away,
Yeah. Well,
it kind of continued.
Well, and it's so funny because I remember, again, like I said, when 606 was coming out, where I was, we were working through our implementation, and it was a change because we were a point in time sale, and now we had to do in process or rev rec. But we got there, fairly painlessly comparatively. And I remember having discussions with my boss at the time, Mike Dillman, who, we would, as we're having these late nights, scratching our heads, looking out the window, like thinking to ourselves, this is kind of rough working through this, but like, gosh, at least we're not dealing with what Jenny's dealing with. I know. And it was funny too, because like when we started attracting, I started working with you guys, it was kind of like seeing like the catch up from where you guys had gotten. And I remember you telling John and I one time, like, it was so tough because these contracts are so innovative that nobody in the country has done rev rec on these before. Right. Because they're so unique, right?
They are. They're so unique. And there's only a handful of companies doing what we do. And then they're all doing it a little different.
Right.
It's not like we're selling fast food or we're selling retail or, residential construction or
fabricating pipe.
Yeah,
exactly.
Whatever it is. This is a very unique industry. And so, it's been challenging, but very rewarding because it's kind of like we never stop studying. We never stop growing. We never stop learning. And that's what's fun for me and a lot of the people I get to work with every day.
Yeah. And I think a lot about it too. I think you're really lucky, and I know we could drop names, but the Deloitte team you mentioned, I think you're really lucky that you guys like came together and partnered on that, because so often and I do think this is a shame in the industry, where so often it's whether it's one side, the company side, or the external or whatever, it seems like it's an adversarial type relationship. And I've never thought that was healthy or productive or efficient, and as we've been on our side, we're on the company. So it's on us to your point, do the research, come up with your own conclusion, back it up per the guidance. Absolutely. And all that. But it helps so much to have that partner on the other side who's, we're in the trench together. We're going to get this figured out, Absolutely.
And I've been very, very fortunate to have a great team at Deloitte that has truly partnered with us and worked through those challenges with us. And on the tax side as well, I've been very fortunate to have a very, very highly skilled, wonderful team at Ernst & Young that has worked through all of this on the tax side, because we're only talking about the GAAP side, right, the book side right now. There is an equally complicated tax piece to this that, I'm not a tax expert. I've never worked in tax.
Me neither.
So we highly rely on our EY team,
right,
to get us through analyzing the thousands of pages of contracts that each one of these projects is, and ensuring that we get to the right conclusion and account for it correctly. Yeah.
To your point, you and I not being tax people, I can't even imagine,
I don't even do my own taxes.
Right. Me neither. Right. No, that's, I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine doing y'all's book to tax walk at the end of the year. It's got to be insanity. And just because of the level of complexity, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Shout out to those, and I've worked, I know some of the people on the Deloitte side, and then they're some of the best that, I've ever worked with. But okay, so that is just a glimpse into why, John and I hold you in such high regard, just because of everything you just went through, because that is complexity unlike so much that you see in the industry. And when people say, they're a subject matter expert, you want to talk about being a subject matter expert. I think you've earned that crown. And that is very impressive, obviously. Another thing that I think is very impressive is, because I'm fortunate enough to have been able to work with you guys and your team that you've put together is awesome. And again, I'm not saying this just because you're right across the table. Your management style and how I've seen you troubleshoot, whether it's just, whatever HR, whatever nonsense, or just how you recruit people and how you train people and how you have grouped your staff and how you've assigned tasks. I think it's excellent. So talk about your team a little bit, and talk about your team. And the next question I'm going to ask you is your managerial and your leadership philosophy.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Where I am today as Executive Vice President of Finance, I oversee all of the accounting and finance functions at Enfra. So everything from AP to accounts receivable to a shared service group that handles cash receipts, expense reports, corporate credit cards, all those things, to also our traditional general ledger accounting. We've got a whole consolidation team. I have of course, financial reporting, audit, tax, bank reporting, treasury management, all of those things. We also have FP&A, of course,
right. Yep.
Budgeting and forecasting.
Got to look through the windshield, not just the rearview mirror.
Absolutely. And then a very large operational finance team,
right,
who serves as the financial partner and the liaison between all of those groups and operations, right? So that's what's under my umbrella today, and has been for the past few years at Enfra. So I felt like I had to give that background.
Yeah,
to
sure. It's a lot.
It's a lot. There's a lot going on there.
So about your team and your...
I've been very fortunate to have full autonomy over managing all of those various teams and the full umbrella of accounting and finance. And so it has been very easy to rebalance work, as you pointed, and manage the groups and the task. You know, because I have the full scope of all of the accounting, finance, and related accounting and finance services, I'm able to more effectively balance the workload and identify when maybe there's a great individual in one role that has skills that are probably better suited for another team in another role, or this team has too much work right now due to these extra projects. Where can I pull in someone from another team to help them? And so that has really helped the organization be successful in the long run, and through all of the various challenges that we've gone through. You know, it's tremendous growth.
Right.
You know, sale from our previous private equity group and ownership group, being sold to a larger private infrastructure fund, ERP implementation, which is when you came in and dove into the trenches with us.
Yeah.
We've got another ERP, implementation going on right now for the second phase, if you will, the group that stayed on their legacy system, rebranding,
Right.
multiple acquisitions, all the things, right? All the things. We've been able to handle those by having the autonomy to rebalance workload and be flexible and be able to adapt within the teams and making sure that everybody's as balanced as possible and being able to make those changes quickly. I've been very blessed to have been given the autonomy to hire and build the team over the years. And then as the company grew and moved to more of a centralized shared service structure a few years ago, we kind of brought it, we were decentralized before that. You might remember.
Right.
We had decentralized accounting and finance teams throughout the legacy companies that were the operating companies years ago. When we brought all of those folks together, it was really a great, challenging, but beautiful opportunity to reorganize in a manner in which was more efficient and gave us the chance to let a lot of individuals grow.
Right.
And so that's really been very cool to see that play out now that we're 2 years past that, pretty much. It was probably one of the most stressful things I've had to do in my career, because it's one thing when you're talking about purchase accounting and on an acquisition, or the accounting, a technical accounting on the 606 of this huge project. But when you're talking about people, that's when that's a whole nother layer of being a manager and feeling the weight of this is their life. This is their livelihood. This is what they do every day. I want them to be happy, And so making sure that each person is in a role where they're going to succeed, where they want to be, where their skills are going to shine, and they're going to work with people that they're going to work well with, all of those things, and really putting tremendous thought into that is where I think we've been able to be successful, was because of the amount of time and care I put into it, and making sure that each person is happy with where they are, And so part of it is I've been able to hire a lot of folks and retain them. And then it's also been, as we've reorganized the entire company and moved towards centralized services, I've been able to structure those centralized services and teams in an efficient and effective way that works best for the people as well as the organization. Happy employees are always going to produce better. Like, keeping your people happy is always going to be what is best for the company. So whatever you can do to do that within reason should be done. And so you asked earlier about leadership style, and number one thing is lead with empathy. To me, I pride myself in being a servant leader. And I think for leaders that are leading with anything else other than that mentality and that focus, they've got it wrong, right? Your job is to serve your employees. You know, my job is not to produce work anymore. I mean, occasionally it is, but you know, my product is my people and the work that they produce. And so if I'm not focused on serving them, then I'm doing this all wrong. And so what does servant leadership mean, right? It means leading with empathy. It's like the golden rule. It's that simple. You learn this in kindergarten, right? Like treat other people the way you want to be treated. Don't treat other people the way that someone treated you, you know, treat them, give them your best, you know? And when you can master that, you're going to have a different outcome in your people, right? People know who's loyal to them, right? And so I find if I am loyal to my people and I, you know, completely put all of my effort into making sure they're successful, then we will all be successful, right? And so one of the things you said earlier, or you said at the end, I'm going to jump to the end. Can I jump to the end? You asked for the best and worst leadership advice.
Yeah, career advice.
Or career advice.
Yeah.
That's what it was. So I had to think about the worst. Well, yeah, I'll just go to the best. The best is if you want to grow, you want to promote in your career, you have to train your backfill.
Right.
If you're my employee and you're micromanaging your people and people are running out the door and you're the only one that can do the job, I'm never going to promote you, right? If you are training a whole team of people underneath you and you've got people that are trained up that can do your job, when there's the opportunity, you're going to get promoted, right? That's the best possible advice. And I've heard multiple people say that. One of my former bosses used to say that, but I also remember hearing that in a leadership class I did 8-9 years ago. And that I think really kind of stuck with me because that's how you get promoted, right? Now, I'm not going out and being a servant leader every day trying to get promoted, you know, like, but if I'm not ensuring that my people are doing that same thing, then I'm not really helping them either, you know?
Right.
I think I really have well, I'll tell you a funny story. I wanted to be an accounting professor. Have I ever told you that before?
No. You'd be a good one.
That's what I wanted to do. Okay. So you know how at LSU, if you get your undergrad and your master's there, you can't get your PhD in accounting?
They want you to, change schools. Yep. I remember that.
Which is super annoying.
Right.
Because like that was not in the cards for me because of life.
Yep.
Before I took this job, I was the assistant controller at a publicly traded bank. And it was a great job. Learned a ton of great stuff that I use every day still. But I was kind of bored. Like I was bored. I literally was looking at like how I could go back and get a PhD in something else. Like I was looking if I could get a PhD in finance at Tulane, or if I could get a PhD, they didn't have accounting in Tulane. So then I was looking at getting a PhD in finance at LSU. Like the't place to get a PhD in accounting, at least it was, I don't know about now, that I could was Ole Miss. Well, I already had 2 kids, like there was no way, right? But that's like what I truly wanted to do. And because I like to teach, like that's what I thrive on, is like teaching people and like mentoring them. And so I think leadership has really given me that opportunity, having staff that I can teach and mentor. Like that's what I get excited about, you know?
Yeah.
I do get excited about the technical accounting. Like I'm a nerd, right? Like
Big
some
nerd,
days,
right?
I'm a huge nerd. Thank you for, I'm a huge nerd. Some days I would love to just like lock up in my office and like do a research paper. Like that would be really great. Just kind of take some time off, you know, read some guidance, write a white paper on something. I don't know. But what keeps me going and like is really the mentoring and the teaching people. And, you know, all right, like showing them how to lead too. You know, like that's been one of the coolest things is like, you know, one of my employees very well, who came in as a senior accountant 6 years ago.
Right.
And, you know, had only had a couple years under her belt. And to take her from there to being this very confident leader who has a whole team underneath her. She's a director of the most technical aspect within my organization. Like, that's the most rewarding thing, right? It's not the white papers.
Right.
It's helping other people grow and, you know, and helping her train her people so that, you know what, when she went on maternity leave earlier this year, her team rocked it.
Yep.
We didn't miss a beat. They were able to handle year end and first quarter without their director there. Was I on the phone with them a lot? Of course. But they rocked it because she did just what I said, right? She has trained her people so that they can do her job. And I mean, that's just, it's brilliant, right? It's so simple. And like so many people miss that when they're trying to climb the corporate ladder and they're trying to step on people. Like, no, you lift other people up around you.
Well, that, I did not cut you off, and I wanted to hear that whole story or your whole spiel there because, I mean, that was very impressive. And I think when you talk about, well, we've been successful because I was given autonomy, you know, to build it and do it the way I wanted to do it. The one impressive thing that you didn't mention, but that I have seen as an kind of an outsider looking in, is that you've always owned it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like you've always, you know, this is my team.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to get it done. And, you know, so often, and the bigger the companies get, it's, oh, well, that's the other department and it's not my job and all that kind of stuff. And you've always just owned it, right?
Right.
And I've never heard you talk about, you know, your mentality about being a servant leader. But I mean, hearing you explain it, like everything's clicking in my mind. I'm like, and I didn't know exactly what your answer was going to be because we never talked about that.
No.
But your answer, I think it shows, you know, with your team. I mean, and you know, you just talked about a certain employee of yours, and you know, and she, you know, and again, I've been lucky to work with your team for a couple of years, and I've kind of, you know, watched her grow, and she is amazing. And it's actually here's a funny story. In our very early days at Attract, we were looking to hire some people, and we had a position named after her. Because we knew we couldn't.
You could not steal her.
Exactly. We knew we would never do that, of course. But like that's exactly who we wanted, right? And you know, and now she's, you know, like you said, I mean, she's amazing. Her team is amazing. And the next question that I want to ask you is, I don't know, maybe a little touchy, because it's about stereotypes and the world we live in and things like that. But one of the things that I have also noticed is, okay, so clearly you're a very successful executive at a construction company, right? A very big construction company, but you are a female executive at a construction company, and there's all these stereotypes, right? And, you know, you've got this mindset of, oh, all the people that work at a construction company are all these old crotchety men, and I'm sure, you know, to some extent that's true. You've been very successful in that space, and again, as an outsider looking in, and again, this is just the cards you were dealt, the people that, you know, you've hired and all that. You have a very big bench of very successful women that work for you. So talk about being, you know, an executive, a female executive for a very large construction company, and any kind of challenges that came with that, right?
Yeah. Well, and it is a touchy subject, but I feel like it shouldn't be, because
right.
Bias exists anywhere. And just us saying, like, oh, you know, is it hard to be a female in a construction company? That's a bias against, you know?
Exactly.
And so
the question is a bias.
The question is a bias.
Right, exactly.
So what I think I have to say first, before I even jump to the question, is it's hard to be a female in any company, right? And maybe not so much, I don't know what it's like to be a 23-year-old female in the working world today. What I do know is what it's like to be a late 30s mom working. It's hard. This world we live in, and you have kids too, so you know, and your kids are younger than mine, but like this world was not made and structured to have parents that work, okay? But then it also wasn't made to not have two working parents. And so the demands of any woman and man, because I see it with my team all the time, their wives work, so the kids get sick, and
Right.
they got stuff at school and they've got sports and like, you got to take them to the doctor and you still got to cook dinner and get dry cleaning done and laundry. And, we're in this like weird time in America where like half the world wants us to be like it was 50 years ago, but it's not, So I would say in general, it's very difficult. And that's where being a good leader and being flexible and helping people make their life work really comes in, because you work to live, you don't live to work.
Right.
And so kind of keeping that, it goes back to the empathy, right? But have I had experienced some bias? Yes, but I've experienced bias in every single industry, right? And so, and there's bias is inevitable, yes. And I would argue that a lot of the bias I've experienced over my overall career might have been age. It wasn't just gender, or it might have been more age. It might have been, and I think it might have been my background. It might have been that I'm from the South versus, not from New York, or wherever, right? It might have been that I'm an accountant, I'm a CPA, I'm a bean counter.
Right.
You get the bean counter.
Oh yeah.
And operations doesn't want to talk to a bean counter.
Right.
You didn't grow up doing whatever in the field, right?
Right.
So, and you're going to experience that in any industry.
Right.
Where you get past it is you have to earn the respect, right? So, we talked about autonomy earlier. The coolest thing about having autonomy and about giving employees autonomy is you sink or swim.
Right.
You figure out what somebody's made of, whether they can do the job or not. If they can't do that job, it doesn't mean they're not a good employee. It means you might need to give them a different job, right? But when you have that autonomy and you learn how to sink or swim, and you do swim, you earn respect. And sometimes you have to demand that respect a little bit. And I think that is not industry specific, right?
Right.
Because you're going to have stereotypes for construction, for engineers, for doctors, for lawyers. There's stereotypes for accountants, right?
Yeah.
So it's more about your personality, your leadership style, and how you adjust to other personalities. That was one thing I mentioned this leadership program. I meant to talk about it earlier. This leadership program I did through the LBA. I did it a year or two before I came to Bernhard, now Enfra. And it was hosted by the LBA, and SSA Consultants put it on. And there was a component that was the Hogan assessment. And then we read some books. We met once a month and did this class, and there was all this homework, whatever. It was life-changing for me.
Right.
Truly, pivotal moment in my professional and personal life. Because what I learned was my personality, also learned better how to read other personalities, how to adjust my communication style for who you're dealing with, how to listen to what's not being said. And some people are more intuitive on that anyways, naturally, but how to really listen for what's not being said, people's mannerisms, how they're saying it, and adjust your communication style back. That really helped me so much, I think, in the past 7 years at Enfra, because I've been so much more successful than I was in the first half of my career, if you will, because I was able to quickly pick up on, this is how I need to talk to this person, or this person responds better if I lead with this, or if I write it out this way, or if I give them updates in this manner, or if I text them as opposed to call them, or if I, it can be subtle, but that can really improve, the overall relationship with someone. And, people are people, and they're going to have bias, but they're far more likely to want to work with you when you earn their respect and when they like you, right? So if you lead with, being their partner,
Right.
And hey, how was your weekend? Takes 5 minutes, right? A little bit of small talk, a little bit of, hey, what else can I do for you? Or, hey, do you want me to handle that invitation for that meeting for you? Just treat other people the way you want to be treated. and they're going to be far more likely to respect you. The most brilliant thing I figured out, and I figured this out in the past 3 years, and I don't remember where I read it, LinkedIn, Instagram, Pinterest, who knows. 95% of what people say and do is about them and not about you. When you finally figure that out and you like absorb that, your life changes. This is, again, personally and professional. So if you think about that, you're on the phone with your client, or I'm on the phone with somebody in operations or in another department, and they're having a bad day and they're being a complete jerk and not being helpful, or not, not wanting to collaborate or cooperate with your requests or whatever it is, that's not about you. It's about them, right? So when you finally realize that like 95% of what people are saying and doing in response to you is really about them and not about you, and you stop caring so much, like it sounds kind of reverse, but you realize it's not really about you, and like you can let it go, like that changes so much from like a mental standpoint. Because you're like, I'm not fighting against them, like that they're having a bad day, or you know what, I've asked them for what I need, or whatever it is, right? And it's about having thick skin. It's
so funny you say this, because like I've observed all these things. I've never heard you talk about your mentality and your attitude towards these things, because I do think you have very tough skin. Right. Or very thick skin, right? And it's funny to hear you say how you got there, right?
Yeah. So I've always had thick skin, because that's just kind of how I was raised and how I, just went about life. Like even from very young, like I always had this mentality, this is how I was raised, like you compete with yourself. You don't compete with other people. Like don't worry about, if you got a better grade than somebody else. Worry about getting a better grade than you got last time. Worry about, and I think that's very important advice for anyone, right? Like you worry about doing the best that you can every day and doing better than you did yesterday or whatever. You don't worry about competing with your peers. That's kind of how I like, started as a young adult and how I was raised. But that kind of developed into having the thick skin. However, for a long time, it was still getting to me, right?
Right.
And I just didn't let it show. Like, it would bother me if I thought somebody was upset with me, because it's natural, right? And then I finally, it sunk in. And like I said, at some point in the past 3 or 4 years, and I was like, you know what? It really has nothing to do with me. Maybe 5% of the time, maybe 10, I'm being obnoxious and maybe I don't even care about that 5% of the time. I don't know. But most of the time, it's not about you, and when you finally realize that and you're like, okay, well, I'm not going to worry about it, because what good does it do me to worry about their reaction, to my request? Okay, I did my job. Sorry. Well, my job was to ask you this question, or my job was to provide you this data, or to set this meeting, or whatever. So sorry that offended you. Like, no, don't worry about it. Like, it's
on with the next.
Yeah. And when you finally get there, like your life's so much simpler. Right. And so this is like, you probably never heard me say these are things that I randomly will tell people at work, whether they're peers or employees or whatever. And, I try to lead by example, and so you're probably not going to hear me say it unless a situation arises and an employee comes to me. It's like, I'm so upset, so-and-so, da-da-da-da. And then I'll give them my 95% spiel, right. Let me tell you the secret to life, but I hope that for the most part, they just pick up on it,
Right. Well, and it does, it rubs off on people.
Right. You don't sweat the small stuff. Right.
Well, I mean, it's like I said, it's been really cool to hear your philosophy on this, because I've seen it play out with your team. But it's interesting to hear you put it into words. So I guess, that was pretty much most of what I wanted to ask you, but I'm not going to let you off the hook. So one of the questions we ask everybody is best and worst career life advice.
Oh, gosh.
So you said the best. You got any really bad advice you've ever gotten?
I'm sure, but I don't.
I guess you probably just one ear and out the other.
That's what I was going to say. You know me. I don't listen. I'll have to learn the hard way. My dad used to always tell me I was so stubborn. He'd always be like, God, you always have to learn the hard way. I'm like, yes, I do. So if anybody gave me bad advice, I didn't listen to it.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure, and I've thought about it because I reread your questions last night when I was preparing my thoughts. And I can't think of any bad advice that I took.
Yeah.
So I'm sure I got plenty of bad advice, but I didn't listen to it. I just...
Not surprising knowing you,
No,
right?
no, not at all. Like, I'm going to do what I think is, right. And that's, I'm going to have conviction. It might be a terrible idea, but at least, but like you said, I own it, right?
Right.
Like, it was my bad idea that I pursued.
Yeah. Oh man, that's so funny.
But I mean, I could talk leadership all day, every day, because that is what I take the most pride in. And what, I find is the most successful aspect and what I'm proudest of where I'm at in my career is the team I've built and the loyalty that we share with one another in our work product, right? Like, I think it shows when we continue to meet deadlines and provide quality work over and over again, despite whatever, challenges we have in front of us.
Right. Well, that is why we're so excited to have you come on and talk with us today, because, going through the 606 stuff, like, I knew you had the debit and credit chops, clearly, because you were dealing with more complicated things than like I could even think of at the time. But what was cool when John and I got to start working with you guys on the ERP side was just getting to know your team and seeing that. So hearing your philosophy on that, that's been really cool. Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on. John and I hold you guys, the whole company. It's such an impressive company, what you guys do. Such an impressive team. We hold you guys in such high regard. So thank you again for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. We so appreciate all of the work that you guys have done for us. We would not be where we are. I was announcing a promotion today on our call right before I came here, our organization-wide call. And I went back to the 8 months we spent in that conference room that you were with us for implementing that ERP.
Yeah.
And we would have never have gotten to where we were and finished the project if it wasn't for you. And so thank you. And you continue to help us. I mean, just this morning I walked in and one of my employees said, "Oh my gosh, thank goodness for Armand. Like, he's already made this situation, sales tax problem, so much easier. Like, he knew exactly what we needed to do. And so we very much value your knowledge, especially your J.D. Edwards knowledge."
Well, thank you. It's funny. I get to do so little of it anymore,
I know.
that it's kind of fun to get to do it again. And, it's funny, you mentioned the 8 months we spent in that conference room. So much fun that none of us would ever want to have again, right? And it's funny because like the requests I get from your team now, it's like I feel like, man, for you guys, this is like this is like a cakewalk. This is like a 5-foot putt. I mean, normally, it's an 8 month project.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I know that's what we were laughing about. I was like, because that was still during the wake of COVID and people were still getting, we were masking at different points. Like, I had the bottles of vitamins and out on the table, that was a long 8 months, but it's been so great to know and to have like some peace of mind that if a couple of projects pile up, I know I can call you and you can plug in in place of me or one of my directors, and it's like, our system, our business, and you have expertise in the system that we don't have, which is very nice.
Well, yeah, it's been fun. It's a pleasure working with you guys. So we really enjoy it and thankful for the opportunity. But again, we hold you guys in such high regard. Thank you so much. I know you're very busy. Thank you so much for coming and talking with us today.